He found her on the coldest night of the year. The patrol had been riding for 6 hours through the Ashenveil Pass, their horses exhaling white plumes into air so sharp it cut the lungs. Lieutenant Cale, Dravon's most trusted field commander, had nearly ordered the column to turn back when Private Oren spotted the shape in the ditch beside the road. Not a shape, a girl. She was half buried in the drift, her dark cloak soaked through to nothing, her fingers curled around a wooden box no bigger than a soldier's pack, sealed with iron bands and a lock shaped like a wolf devouring its own tail. She was breathing. Barely. They brought her in. Nobody asked questions yet. That was Dravon's rule. You bring in the living first. You ask questions when they can answer them. But every man in that patrol looked at the box. And every man looked away. She woke 2 days later in the infirmary of Ironhold Fortress, the seat of the Alpha King's Northern Command. The room smelled of pine resin and tallow, and the fire was the most warmth Seraphine had felt in weeks. She lay still for a long moment before she moved, cataloguing the damage. A cut along her left collarbone from a fall on the ridge, ribs that ached with every breath, fingers that had gone numb on the trek and were only now reclaiming sensation in needles of pain. The box was beside her on the table. She exhaled. A guard was stationed at the door. He was large and young, and he was trying very hard not to look at her. She recognized the effort. People who weren't supposed to feel curiosity always tried that hard. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. Ironhold Fortress," the guard said, still not looking. "Northern garrison of the Alpha King." Seraphine closed her eyes. She had known this was the risk. She had run the calculation 100 times in the weeks before she'd set out, crouched in the ruins of her family's estate, while the last embers of the fire her stepmother had set still glowed in the dark. The calculation was simple. North was the only direction left. North was the only place the woman couldn't follow. And north, eventually, meant this. She had just not expected to arrive half dead in a ditch. "He'll want to see me," she said quietly. The guard blinked. "The king?" "Yes." A long pause. "I'll send word." He left. She waited. The fire popped and shifted. Seraphine pushed herself upright, ignoring the pull in her ribs, and reached for the box. So she pressed her palm flat against the iron lid and felt the faint vibration beneath. The thing inside, still contained, still waiting. She allowed herself exactly 3 seconds of fear, then set the fear aside. She had gotten very good at that. What she looked like, she had almost forgotten, in the months of running. But the water in the bucket beside the bed showed her. Dark copper hair, matted now, and tangled from days in the snow, hanging loose past her shoulders. Eyes the grey of a winter sky before a storm. A face that was not soft. High cheekbones, a jaw with quiet stubbornness in it. A mouth that had learned to stay closed. She was 22 years old, and she looked like someone who had survived things that should have killed her. She did not look like a girl who carried sealed boxes through mountain passes in the dead of winter. She looked like exactly that girl. She just hoped that wasn't obvious. The door opened again. Not the guard. 2 men, both in the black uniform of the king's inner guard, both looking at her the way people look at something they cannot categorize. Behind them, filling the doorframe in a way that made the room feel suddenly smaller, was Dravon. He was everything the stories said, and nothing like them at the same time. 6'4" at least, shoulders built for war, dark hair, close cropped at the sides, longer on top and slightly disordered, not from carelessness, but from hours in a saddle. His eyes were the amber of burning coal, and they moved over her in a single sweep that felt like being read at speed. Injury, posture, the box on the table. and then back to her face. He said nothing. That was the first surprise. The story said Dravon, the Alpha King of the Northern Reach, spoke in commands. Short sentences, no preamble. His silence was not quiet. It pressed. Seraphine met it directly. My name is Seraphine of the House Varel. The box I carry is not contraband, not a weapon, and not yours. I request an audience. One of the inner guard stepped forward. You're in no position to request Kale. One word from Dravon. The man stopped. Dravon stepped closer. The room contracted again. He was looking at the box now, and something had shifted behind his eyes. Not curiosity. Recognition. Seraphine's pulse jumped before she could stop it. House Varel, he said. His voice was low, textured, unhurried. I dissolved 6 months ago. Dissolved, she said. Is a polite word for what happened? A pause. He was very close now. Close enough that she could see the thin scar at his left temple, an old one, and the way his jaw had a particular set when he was deciding something. What's in the box? He asked. A conversation, she said. But only between you and me. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said to the guards, Get out. They obeyed. The door closed. Seraphine was alone with the most dangerous man in the Northern Hemisphere, and she was sitting on an infirmary cot in a borrowed shift with bruised ribs and frost-damaged fingers. She had rehearsed this moment. She had rehearsed it, standing in the snow with the wind trying to knock her down and the cold trying to take her under. And she had told herself, when you are in the room with him, do not flinch. She did not flinch. Before I open this box, she said, there are 2 things you need to know. The first is that the box carries the seal of the Varel bloodline. A bloodline your family records list as extinct. The second is that the woman who burned my home and drove me out of it is currently advising your war council. The amber in his eyes shifted, went gold. Her name, he said, Lady Maren Solvis. The room dropped in temperature by several degrees. Not a metaphor. The air itself changed. Seraphine had been told about this. The way the Alpha King's control over the cold was tied directly to his emotional state. The court pretended it was natural weather. Everyone knew it wasn't. Maren Solvis, he repeated, very quietly. I is my most senior tactical advisor. I know, Seraphine said. And she is also the woman who paid 3 men to kill me on the Ashenveil Pass. I'm here because 2 of the 3 had second thoughts, and only 1 followed through. And he had poor aim. The scar at his temple tightened. You have proof. Not a question. Seraphine lifted the box and turned the lock, not with a key. She pressed 2 fingers to the wolf devouring its tail, and the iron bands released. The lid opened. Inside, a leather satchel of documents. Letters in Maren Solvis's own hand. The distinctive narrow script, the personal seal, correspondence with 3 foreign powers, one of them an active enemy of the Northern Reach. Transcripts of conversations that should not have been possible to record. And at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, a vial of silver-grey liquid. Dravon looked at the vial and went absolutely still. That, Seraphine said carefully, is what she's been putting in your evening wine for the past 8 months. The silence that followed was the heaviest thing in the room. It suppresses the mate bond, she said. The recognition instinct. You would have felt it once. The pull towards someone specific. She needed you not to feel it. He picked up the vial, turned it in his fingers. The fire was the only sound. Toward whom? He said, and his voice had gone to something stripped of everything except the question. Seraphine looked at him steadily. Your records would list her as extinct, she said. House Varel. Last surviving bloodline of the original Silver Wolf Pact. He put down the vial. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Not the cataloguing sweep of before, but something different. something that started in his chest and moved outward. And she watched the moment it hit him, watched his eyes go from amber to gold to something brighter, something that belonged to the animal beneath the king. The cold in the room broke like a fever. Warmth flooded back. The fire blazed. "That's not possible," he said. But the way he said it, not denial, disbelief that the world had arranged itself so precisely, so cruelly, and taken so long to put them in the same room. "I know," she said. "I've been running from it for months." She knew. His voice had dropped to something very quiet. "Maren knew what you were. She's known since before you were crowned. Her family has been suppressing Varel bloodline heirs for 3 generations. I'm the last one who got out." What happened in the next 10 seconds, Seraphine would remember for the rest of her life. Dravon did not move dramatically. He did not roar or smash something or make a speech. He set the vial down on the table with great care, as though it were something he would deal with precisely and completely. And then he looked at her, and something in his face, in the particular geography of jaw and brow and amber eyes, became, for just a moment, entirely unguarded. "You walked through the Ashenveil Pass," he said, "in a blizzard, alone." "I couldn't risk bringing anyone with me," she said. "She has people watching the lower roads." "You could have died." "I was fairly motivated not to." He made a sound that was not quite a laugh. It was the first fully human sound she had heard from him, and it undid something in her chest that she had tied very tightly shut. "Your ribs," he said, "are fine. 3 are cracked," he said. "The garrison physician told me this morning." He paused. "I had him check before I came down." Seraphine blinked. "You checked on me." "You arrived half dead in my patrol's ditch, carrying a sealed box with a wolf devouring its tail lock. I was curious." She looked at him. He looked at her. The fire crackled. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, and the gold was fully in his eyes. "I have a conversation with Lady Maren Solvus." He picked up the satchel of letters. "And after that, I have a longer conversation with you." He moved toward the door, stopped, did not turn around. "You're safe here," he said. Not a platitude, a command directed at the universe. And Seraphine exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The confrontation with Maren Solvus happened that evening in the War Council chamber, and it was not quiet. Seraphine heard it from 2 floors up, through stone walls, which communicated something about the decibel level. She was in Dravon's private receiving room, moved there by his personal guard after he'd left without explanation, though the guard's expression had said, "King's orders, don't ask," sitting beside a fire that was finally genuinely warm, with a plate of food she had mostly eaten and a cup of something hot she had entirely finished. She heard the shouting, then the crash. Something heavy, council table or chair, then silence, then boots on the stairs. But Dravon came through the door, with blood on his knuckles. Not his. And a stillness about him that was more frightening than any rage. Behind him, at a careful distance, came Kale, the lieutenant, carrying the satchel. "She confessed," Kale said, "for Seraphine's benefit." His voice was neutral in the way of a man carefully not commenting on what he had just witnessed. Everything. The suppression compound, the foreign correspondence, the contracts on House Varel. "The contracts," Seraphine said, plural. She had known, abstractly, but hearing it confirmed made the room sharpen. 6, Dravon said. His voice was back to the stripped, precise register. "Over 7 years, you are very difficult to kill." "People keep observing that," she said. He looked at her. The blood on his knuckles, the fire between them. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her chair, which brought his face level with hers, which was not what she expected from a man his size, and she had the sudden absolute conviction that he had done it deliberately, made himself small for her. "She will stand trial," he said. "By spring she will be in a cell beneath the Ironhold, and the foreign powers she was negotiating with will have a new understanding of what the Northern Reach's position is." He paused. "None of that is what I want to say to you." Seraphine waited. "What I want to say," he said, "is that you should not have had to do this alone. That someone should have known what was being done to your family. That I—" He stopped. The muscle at his jaw worked once. "I should have known. I was being managed, and I did not see it." "You were being drugged," she said. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation." He held her gaze. "There is a difference." She understood suddenly that this was not a man who made apologies easily or emptily, that the words cost him something real. "I know," she said quietly. "I know there's a difference." Outside, the snow had started again. Through the high window she could see it. Pale and soft, nothing like the Ashenveil Pass, nothing like the blizzard she'd walked through with the box clutched to her chest and 3 cracked ribs and the absolute refusal to stop. The snow here looked clean. It looked like a beginning. Dravon's hand, careful, deliberate, covered hers, where it rested on the chair arm. His fingers were warm. The warmth moved up her arm and settled somewhere in her sternum, and she recognized it distantly as the thing she had been told about. The thing the suppression compound had kept from happening. The mate bond, completing itself, knitting 2 ends of a frayed thread back together. It felt like coming indoors. "There is a great deal," he said, "that we need to talk about." "I know," she said. "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight you have cracked ribs and frost damage, and you haven't slept properly in, I estimate, looking at you, at least 3 weeks." A pause. 2.5, she admitted. Something shifted in his face. Softened. In the way of something that has been rigid for too long, finally remembering what ease feels like. "Rest," he said. "Everything else is still here in the morning?" She looked at the sealed box, sitting open now on the table. The letters inside had done their work. The vial was in Dravon's physician's hands. The lock was open. Something she had carried for months, not just the box, but the weight of being the last one, the only one, the one who had to make it through. Shifted. Did not disappear, but lightened. "All right," she said. "In the morning." He stood, moved toward the door, and then, because she had carried a sealed box through a blizzard alone at 22 with 3 cracked ribs, she allowed herself one more thing. "Dravon." He stopped. "Thank you," she said, "for bringing me in." The gold was entirely in his eyes. "You were in my patrol's ditch," he said. "There was never a question of leaving you there." He left. The door closed. Outside, the snow fell soft and silent over Ironhold Fortress, and Seraphine, for the first time in 2.5 years, let herself sleep without listening for the sound of someone at the door. 3 weeks later, in the great hall of Ironhold, with the Northern Reaches Council assembled and the full garrison bearing witness, Dravon stood with Seraphine at his right hand and declared the trial of Marin Solvis open. It lasted 4 days. The letters were read. The vial was tested, confirmed, its composition detailed by the garrison physician in language that left the council in airless silence. 3 foreign ambassadors were recalled. 2 of Solvis's associates in the lower fortress were arrested within the first hour of the trial's 2nd day. Marin Solvis stood throughout with her chin up and her jaw set, and her eyes showing, finally, the thing that had always been there beneath the surface. Not ambition. Fear. The fear of a woman who had spent 3 generations worth of careful plans unwound in a single night by a girl she had been trying to kill since she was 15. On the fourth day, Dravon read the verdict himself. The sentence was the cage, not execution. Something Seraphine had asked for the night before, quietly, over the fire. Why? Dravon had asked. Because I want her to have a long time to think about it, she had said. And because I'm tired of things ending in fire. He had looked at her for a long moment. Then he had written the sentence himself. The trial ended at midday. By evening, the garrison was celebrating. Not loudly, not recklessly, but with the particular warmth of people who have been under a shadow they didn't fully understand and have stepped out of it, into light. Seraphine stood at the high window of the receiving room, looking out over the Ashenveil Pass, in the distance. The ridge she had walked, visible from here as a dark line against the white. She had her own clothes now, sent for from what remained of her family's estate. A deep grey wool dress, a cloak lined with dark fur. She looked like herself. She had almost forgotten what that was. Dravon came to stand beside her. The foreign powers have responded, he said. As expected. Is it bad? Manageable, he said. Better than the alternative would have been. A pause. The council wants to formally recognize House Varel. She said nothing for a moment. The snow on the pass was blue in the evening light. You don't have to, he said. I'm not saying this as a condition of anything. I know, she said. Yeah, she turned to look at him. I know you're not. The gold in his eyes was steady now. Not the wild surge of recognition from the infirmary, but something settled. Something that had found its ground and intended to keep it. He was looking at her, the way he had looked at the sealed box before she'd opened it, certain that what was inside mattered, patient enough to let her show it in her own time. I'd like to recognize it, she said. House Varel. I'm the last one. It should be remembered. Then it will be, he said, simply. As though things he decided simply happened. She almost laughed. You're very certain of things. I've spent 8 months being chemically uncertain of the most important thing I could have known, he said, very quietly. I find I have very little patience for uncertainty now. The fire behind them, the snow outside, the distance between them, which was not much distance, and which he closed by one careful step. Seraphine. Yes. I am going to be very certain, he said, for a long time, if you can tolerate that. She looked up at him, the scar at his temple, the amber gold eyes, the man who had crouched to her eye level in a receiving room, because he had wanted her to feel met, not managed. I think, she said, I can tolerate that. He exhaled, short, controlled, the single breath of a man who has been holding something in. And then he smiled. It was a small smile, private, the kind that is not performed for anyone. It was the most dangerous thing she had seen him do yet. Outside, over the Ashenveil Pass, the northern reach stretched white and vast and cold and clean, and the snow fell soft and indifferent and beautiful, the way it had the night his patrol had found a girl half buried in a ditch with a sealed box and the absolute refusal to die. She had not known that night that she was being found. She was beginning to understand that she had been. If you could carry one secret through a blizzard, knowing it could change everything, would you? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time.